Hello and welcome to episode 1 of our podcast series on the history of rock music. In this episode, we're going to explore the early influences that helped shape rock music. We'll discuss the impact of blues, country, and gospel music on early rock musicians, as well as the emergence of early rock pioneers like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley. We'll also touch on the social and cultural context in which rock music emerged, including the civil rights movement and the rise of youth culture. So let's start by talking about the roots of rock music. Many music historians believe that rock music can trace its origins back to the blues. The blues emerged in the late 19th century in the southern United States, particularly in the Mississippi Delta region. It was a style of music that was characterized by its raw emotion, simple chord progressions, and lyrical themes of hardship and struggle. In the early 20th century, the blues began to evolve and spread throughout the country. Musicians like Blind Lemon Jefferson, Lead Belly, and Robert Johnson became popular among both black and white audiences. Their music would go on to influence a generation of musicians, including some of the earliest rock and roll pioneers. Another important influence on rock music was country music. Country music had its roots in the folk music of the Appalachian region and was characterized by its storytelling lyrics and acoustic instrumentation. In the 1930s and 1940s, country music began to incorporate more electric instrumentation, such as the electric guitar and steel guitar. This helped to pave the way for the electric sound of rock and roll. Gospel music was also an important influence on early rock musicians. Gospel music had its roots in the African American church and was characterized by its powerful vocals and religious themes. Many early rock and roll singers, such as Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, had their start in the gospel music scene. Now, let's talk about some of the early rock pioneers. One of the most important figures in the early days of rock and roll was Chuck Berry. Berry was a guitarist and songwriter who blended elements of blues and country music to create a unique sound. He had a string of hits in the 1950s, including Maybelline and Johnny B. Gooder, that helped to define the sound of early rock and roll. Another important figure in the early days of rock was Little Richard. Little Richard was a singer and pianist who brought a flamboyant style and powerful vocals to rock and roll. His hits, such as Tutti Frutti and Good Golly, Miss Molly, helped to popularize the genre and inspired countless future musicians. Of course, no discussion of early rock and roll pioneers would be complete without mentioning Elvis Presley. Elvis was a singer and actor who became a cultural icon in the 1950s. His unique blend of rock, country, and blues music, along with his controversial dancing and style, made him a sensation among both teenagers and adults. So why did rock music emerge when it did? One important factor was the rise of youth culture in the 1950s. For the first time, young people had money to spend on music and entertainment, and they wanted something that reflected their own experiences and values. Rock and roll provided an outlet for this new generation of young people, and its rebellious spirit and energetic sound resonated with them. Another important factor was the civil rights movement. Rock and roll emerged at a time when racial segregation was still a reality in many parts of the country. The genre brought together black and white musicians and audiences and helped to break down barriers and create a sense of unity and common ground. So that's a brief overview of the roots of rock music. In the next,